Hey guys, welcome to the Strength Solutions Podcast. If you're looking for us, go to Apple or Spotify. If you're looking for a website, it's ssempowered.com. As well, if you're looking at emails, future fitness questions, it's strengthsolutionsempowered@gmail.com. And then if you're looking for social media, it's Strength Solutions on Facebook, Strength Solutions Empowered on Instagram. I'm Strength Solutions Edwin.
I'm Strength Solutions Nathaniel.
Okay, we got a special guest here. I'm going to allow her to introduce herself. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hello, my name is Dawn Thornhill. I'm a nurse practitioner, family nurse practitioner, and founder of Renew Wellness and Aesthetics. We are a medical weight loss, hormone replacement therapy, wellness clinic. So we specialize in basically helping people have a very healthy foundation so that we can age gracefully and look good, feel good, and perform good.
Cute. I like that. Age gracefully. Yes. That's really nice. Yeah.
I don't know. I like aging horribly. I like being wrecked.
You're doing great, dude.
I'm doing great. All right.
You're doing good.
I'll be a smoker.
Yeah.
So you obviously help a lot of people with wellness. What brought you into this space? We talked a little bit earlier. You were in the physique bodybuilding world and saw IFB pros, right? It's just too many letters. Why can't they just put one?
And you competed, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
I won my pro card in 2020 in Masters Figure.
Oh, congratulations. We're going to need you to stand up and do it.
Oh, no. I know.
No posing. So what brought you into the space? A little bit of background. So for example, me and Nathaniel talk about how we were insecure as children and it kind of brought us into personal training space. And I think a lot of personal trainers, that's what brings them to that space. What brought you into nursing and the medical field and that route?
I actually started out thinking growing up, I wanted to be a lawyer. I wanted to make a lot of money. That's what was important to me.
I just want to know.
Because my parents were very poor.
I just want to know, is she great at arguing? Okay, we got
an audience member here.
And so I had a big shock when my father, who was a Vietnam veteran and had Agent Orange, got sick at 49. And I helped care for him when he had cancer removed from multiple places in his body. And there was a lot of wound care, a lot of hospitalizations, and just learning the hospital process. The medical world was new to me, and I really enjoyed being a part of that for him. So I went back to nursing school and I became an RN and then was working for the VA healthcare system because I wanted to stay in that kind of world with my father until he passed. He passed in my hospital. And so at that time I was kind of learning to be an adult athlete. I had grown up, in athletics my whole life. And as an adult, you probably have found this. If you're used to competing in athletics and you reach that point where you're not going to be a pro of any sort and life really starts and you're like missing that. So I started in the CrossFit world and was doing CrossFit and was having a lot of injuries and I ego lift. I'm terrible at ego lifting.
Okay.
And so I was feeling it. And I just was in that world with CrossFit. You'll notice there's a lot of nurses and firefighters and military. And I started learning some of the things that these veterans were experiencing and how it correlated to their hormones. And reading the research, I was really frustrated that we were letting these guys down because we weren't managing them correctly. I was seeing very young men with TBIs which led to more risk for PTSD and things like that because of their hormone imbalance, and we weren't managing it. So I started researching it and moved myself into more of a competitive world again in the bodybuilding world. I started learning about bodybuilding. And then, of course, hormones play a major role in how we perform and how we appear, how we look on stage. So I just started spending a lot of time getting extra education on that as I continued my education to become a nurse practitioner. And so I was working for the VA healthcare system and part-time working in hormones for another clinic when COVID happened. And my husband lost his job. So we moved across the country from Florida to Texas. And I found myself with a clinic here in Texas, managing hormones for patients. A very great clinic. They do a lot for the veteran population. I loved that. But unfortunately, it just wasn't a good fit for me. So I decided to take the jump and open a clinic on my own. And so that's where we are now.
Yeah.
So
love that.
Just over a year. Renew Wellness focuses mostly on wellness and hormone optimization. I would say that's the bulk of our patients are either the average guy who is not having intimacy with his wife any longer because of his hormones. Maybe he's going through andropause.
It was that guy right there.
Yeah, I'll talk about it.
Yeah.
To, your bodybuilders, your professional athletes. I take care of some wrestlers, some professional bodybuilders, actors, stuntmen, people who have to be fit for their industry, but also people who have to be fit to do their career in the real world. Our police officers, our firefighters, our veterans who are working for contract jobs with the DOD and things like that. They're experiencing inability to perform at their best because of their hormone changes. And so not only can we help them with that, we can also improve their risk for chronic conditions that happen as we age, just by balancing those hormones and optimizing. And when I say optimizing, I mean help them have the balance that makes them personally feel their best and be their healthiest. That is going to be a little different for everyone. So it's more about figuring that person out and helping them feel their best, honestly.
Very good.
Dang.
That was great.
Nailed it.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
I think we're done, right?
Yeah, that was good.
No, so you're a nurse, right?
I'm a nurse practitioner.
So a lot of people be like, why should I go to you if there's not a doctor behind you, right? We talk about it all the time. I don't care if you're a doctor or whatever degree. It just shows how much passion you have behind this in your voice and everything. And I think people would, and just hearing that word that you say, you individualize things, tells me you've done this for a long time.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it's very patient specific. If you're getting a cookie cutter hormone protocol, you may feel a little bit better, but it's not the best for you necessarily. And truthfully, there's a lot of risk involved with HRT. And so if we're not monitoring you correctly and we're not optimizing you correctly based on your other conditions and your lifestyle and your genetics, there could be some detriment. We could do a little bit of harm as well very easily. So you have to have a provider who's willing to know you, to listen to you. If your doctor isn't taking the time to go over your labs with you and explaining why things look the way they look, not just saying, there's no red here, so you're within range, you're good. You're getting a disservice. You really are.
So how does that work with y'all? So do y'all meet with them like once a month, or, what's the process like? So that if I'm coming in, I give you my blood work, how am I going to get my blood work, everything, just explain from like,
so it really depends. Most patients start with a phone call or a text message, or they'll email me from the website. They may or may not have ever had labs drawn. It's really common to find patients who've been symptomatic for a long time and they've asked for help from their providers, their family doc, their nurse practitioner, their endocrinologist, and it's overlooked. It's told, well, you're not really at the age where we would expect you to have hormone problems, so they won't even draw the labs. So a lot of people try to do it on their own. They'll go to these online lab companies and they'll order labs, and then they're kind of stuck. What now? Now I can see. What do I do now? So they'll upload their labs for me and they'll let me, we'll schedule a call and we'll go over them. We can order labs for patients. I work with a company that helps get us a little discounted rate on the hormone panel, so it makes it more affordable if we're paying out of pocket. We'll send you a lab requisition and you just walk into LabCorp and have them drawn, and then they send us the results and we schedule a consultation to go over them. Usually it's either a script for labs or a requisition for labs that they purchased through the
So if it's out of pocket, do you know about the cost for it?
Sure. A full female or male hormone panel is usually about $179.
That's not bad at all.
Yeah. And if you're paying out of pocket, insurance will usually cover those. I generally will write a script and have patients call their insurance company first to ensure that they're going to cover it, to make sure it's, more affordable, just in case they're going to get a bill 6 months down the road from Quest. We want to make sure it's covered. So if not, they'll pay out of pocket for it.
Okay.
And so when you do these labs, I'm assuming you do more than just like testosterone and things like that. What exactly are you looking for on them?
So initially it depends on what the patient's experiencing. For instance, tremendous fatigue, chronic fatigue, brain fog. We should look at a couple other things besides the hormones. So we may be looking at a CBC so we can ensure they're not anemic or there's no infection.
Okay.
We may include an IGF-1 level. If there's a risk for, low growth hormone that could be, contributing, if they have a history of a brain injury, something like that. So it's really specific to the patient. But on average, a basic hormone panel for a male is going to include a CBC, which looks at your white blood cells, your red blood cells, anemia, those kind of things. CMP, which looks at your kidney function, your liver function, electrolyte balance, insulin resistance. We look at that fasting glucose. We're looking at albumin because that impacts how our body can use our testosterone, that bioavailability. We're looking at their total protein. If they're not consuming enough protein or they're not absorbing their protein well, we may see that contributes to muscle wasting. So there's a lot of things within the basic panels that we generally get at our doctor that can tell us about their metabolic function and just their health overall on top of the hormones. We look at the thyroid. They interact. The sex hormones and the thyroid very much impact each other. So we'll look at the thyroid. We'll look at, for females, we do a pregnancy test. For males, we do a PSA. We want to make sure you have a healthy prostate if we're going to think about maybe testosterone specifically.
Right.
So it's a very vast, panels that we order. Sometimes we're doing gut testing. It might be breath testing. We might do blood spot testing to look at specifics. So some things we can get more accurate measurements through breath or urine versus blood. So it just depends on what the patient's experiencing, what their goals are.
So I've never heard of breath testing. What is that?
Breath testing is pretty cool. So we have a lot of dysbiosis. Our gut is a microbiome, it's a living organism. There's things going on in there that are important for our health. A lot of our dopamine, serotonin, it begins in the gut.
Yeah.
So we don't realize sometimes how much our gut impacts our health, our mood, our energy, all of that. And so it's a gut test. It is a way that they can look at the hydrogen ions and the gases in our gut that are produced by microorganisms that maybe shouldn't be there or we have an overgrowth of. So if we can identify what microorganisms we have in our gut that shouldn't be there and how we can treat it, we can usually, reduce that inflammation for them, help them feel a lot better, help them absorb their nutrients better. It's really helping a lot of patients just have a little bit better quality of life because of issues with bowels and energy.
Would you say that if someone's having trouble losing weight, and this could be the answer for them?
In part, it's a combination of things, but the gut certainly can play a major role in weight loss resistance.
Okay.
And so for these things that you have, are you prescribing medication? Is it lifestyle changes? Is it diet? What exactly are you giving them once you
all
get
of the
this
above?
information?
It really depends. So generally I'm going to talk to patients about, what they're feeling, what their goals are, use their history, their family history. What is your activity level? I mean, how many times has your doctor actually asked you, do you exercise? What do you eat?
Yeah.
That is so important for identifying, how our body, our health in general.
Right.
So we have those conversations and we include all of that information in figuring our plan of care. Once we know what's occurring, if there's a dis-ease, something going on that we need to treat, it depends on our options. We may talk about the most natural methods from a female with low testosterone level. She's childbearing age. We don't want to impact her fertility. We maybe want to try to treat this as naturally as possible for as long as we can so she can ensure fertility to conceive her family. So we may use supplements. We may use a fitness routine to get her more comfortable with exercising, getting weight-bearing exercises, resistance training. We may give them nutrition advice, supplement advice, or we may prescribe medication. But I generally will give all options available and let the patient be involved in making that decision how we treat it. We may try naturally and then ultimately end up treating with hormones if that's what we find that we need. Sometimes we use peptides, amino acid peptides, but it really involves a lot of different aspects. We have to involve your sleep quality. Are you sleeping well? Are you sleeping enough? Are you letting yourself rest or are you overtraining? And I know that term is, you hear that a lot of people don't like that word overtraining, but if you don't allow your muscles to recover, you're not going to grow, and sometimes we need to tell you to get some rest, listen to your body. So it's very different for everyone.
Interesting.
I think we're done after that.
No, very cool. Yeah. So where do you feel that where do you find that you start most often? Like, I guess in your, I don't want to say opinion, but I guess it's the only thing I could say is like, do you normally want to start with natural things? Do you normally want to start? I know it's individualized, but where do you find that you end up starting the most?
Generally, I would say the bulk of the patients that I see are either andropause, menopause, perimenopausal. They truly have imbalances that are affecting their quality of life and their health.
Are they actually in that age range, or are you finding that they're younger?
It varies. It varies. We're absolutely seeing a decline in sex hormone production across the board, male, female, in the U.S. specifically.
So, okay.
And that's reducing the age. I'm seeing 20-something-year-old males who have no previous head injury. They're not obese, no family history, no pituitary adenoma, all of the things that could be causing their deficiency we can't explain other than environmental. That are leading to lower, production of testosterone at a younger age, as well as fertility concerns.
Yeah. So what do you, I guess like you're saying, you're seeing this kind of rise in it, right? Rise in this lower production. Yeah. So what do you, I know you said environmental, but what exactly do you kind of think in the environment is causing this sort of like decline in hormone production? Yeah.
We're being poisoned. I mean, we're literally being poisoned. We just don't realize it. We've grown up in a country where we feel safe, that our government is protecting us and they're regulating our foods, not realizing how little that regulation is protecting us. And that's from the foods that we consume to the plastics that we touch to the shampoo that we wash our head with, to the things we wash our laundry with, that our skin is our largest organ and it absorbs. And so things are affecting our pituitary system and our endocrine system negatively. And unfortunately, we're not making changes as a society to prevent it. So we have to educate people. We have to let people know who didn't know. I have 4 children. I have 3 daughters that are adults. We have a new granddaughter, and I have a younger daughter. She's 9. And I didn't know this when I was raising my older children. And I have one daughter who's having fertility issues, and we don't really know the cause of it, but we do know that these endocrine disruptors are very much impacting fertility rates in the U.S. And so I wonder, had I known, would she be experiencing this? Had I fed her differently and been more conscientious of the things that I let her encounter? Would I have protected her from that? I don't know. And I don't know if cancer at 50, is something that we'll see. We really don't know, but we definitely know there's a correlation. And so with my 9-year-old, I'm making a lot of steps. My husband gets mad at me. He thinks I'm crazy. But I know that there's some things I can't control. So I'm going to. The things I can't control, I'm not going to drive myself crazy trying to avoid absolutely every chemical that could hurt us. But those forever chemicals, the PFAs, the phthalates, those kind of things, I'm absolutely going to make sure that I avoid those at every cost.
So can you list some of the items that you are not allowing your child to have? So that way people can have an idea of like the xenoestrogens and stuff. Like I know receipts, like you don't want to touch receipts, right?
Huge BPAs. Absolutely. So
like receipt paper?
Yes.
What?
Yes. You will find it's a very high BPA content and it can absorb in our hands.
Right.
So if you can avoid touching receipts, don't think I'm crazy. Don't touch receipts. They're not good for you. You potentially could be getting those harmful chemicals. And those are forever chemicals, meaning we don't metabolize them out of our system. So the ones that we do, some of the things that we might encounter, from dyes that are in our foods, they impact us initially and then we metabolize them and they're gone out of our system. And if we continue to avoid them beyond that, you can really, prevent damage from them. But the forever chemicals, once we've consumed them, they're there.
There's no way to get rid of them.
No. Well, there's some conflicting science. There's ways to detox from heavy metals and things like that. But solid evidence-based scientific evidence on how to remove them and how to kind of detox from them, there's not a whole lot.
It doesn't exactly exist. Got it.
Did y'all see that California is trying to get rid of red dye 40?
Okay, so what do you think about regulations there? I know that California is a little bit different. They're more strict on a lot.
It's very, very overregulated. In my industry as well, I mean, I can't ship to California, whether I'm licensed there or not, from a compounding pharmacy.
Really?
So you think it's overregulated?
I wish that there wasn't so much politicization of regulation.
That's fair.
It's tough, but it's necessary to keep a population safe. Like I said, had we known, my mother wouldn't have given me chemicals that she thought would have harmed me. She didn't know, but our government allowed it at that time. So I understand why regulation's in place and the value of it. But when we have a government that, or a society that doesn't trust government very well, then we run into a problem because they're not going to listen anyway.
Yeah, I remember my mom used to tell me that she would like play with mercury. Like just like as a toy, like you buy it in a store.
How cool is it though?
She was like, it was really cool.
It is cool.
But I'm like, man, that's so insane how just like things have changed since then.
We didn't know.
Yeah,
Fluoride.
you just didn't know, right?
I mean, things that we know now very clearly we're going to avoid. I mean, you look back at how medicine began and the things that we used to treat patients that we realize now are so harmful. Yeah, cocaine definitely helped stop the nasal passageways and when they're doing surgery, but we don't want somebody consuming that in another environment.
Right. So I guess, okay, so like I'm hearing all of this, right? And it's kind of like, eye-opening and things like that. How exactly, I guess, do you live your life in a way that kind of coincides with all of this that you believe and teach and everything like that? And how can, I guess, the normal person sort of kind of take on some of those advice or just information and kind of apply it into their own life?
It's really hard. You have to figure out a way to have balance. You have to live your life without being scared of everything that's going to hurt you.
Because, like I know people who will listen to this and be like, oh, I'm never going outside again.
No, I've shared things on social media and my friends are like, oh my gosh, now the receipts are trying to kill us. And you're crazy, Dawn. But if you know and you avoid a little bit, that may help your health. So I want you to know, think I'm crazy. That's okay. But I definitely think that it's important to find balance. Just educate yourself, read, listen to scientists, listen to Jordan Peterson or Huberman Lab or Joe Rogan when he's got experts on. Just listen to the people that are in the know, listen to what the scientific studies are, and make your own decision.
Wow.
You know what tells me you're a good person is the fact that you're telling people to make their own decision versus just listening to you.
Yeah, because we say that a lot on our own too. Because we have personal training and we talk about research articles and things like that. Now that we're having new people come on and everything, it's like a lot of the times we tell people like, yes, there's this information, right? Yes, maybe you hear things on the media or social media, right? Or from friends or family or whatever it is. And it's like at the end of the day, you have to make the decision of what's best for you in whatever way that's going to work. And you can't, like you said, it's impossible, right? You can't do everything.
Yeah. Well, you're also going to reach a point when you're educating yourself, like, now what? What do I do now? What's my takeaway from this?
Right.
For me, it's been my daughter drinks her water every day out of a metal water bottle. I don't let her use, plastic. I won't drink hot Starbucks coffee out of a Starbucks cup because that waterproof cup has something in it that's making it waterproof. When you heat that up, that could be getting into our coffee, things like that. I just try to think things through. Read the label. If you're consuming tons of food that you can't even pronounce what's in it, are you eating food?
So would you say that one of the best things people can do is probably eat more whole food?
1,000%. But you also have to know the source of your whole food.
Yeah, right.
Obviously, if we could all have a beautiful regenerative farm in our backyard, we'd have great health.
Great,
but you need to know, what does GMO mean? What does free range mean?
Yeah.
What does grass-fed mean?
Organic.
Because a lot of things are just deceptive. Look at citric acid. Citric acid is a chemical that's used in foods these days, and there's nothing citric about it. It's derived from a mold. But we see citric acid, we assume it's from a citrus fruit in some way, and it's safe and it's not harmful. So you have to educate yourself.
Golly, it's crazy.
It's like when I learned about orange juice, and it really doesn't have to be orange at all. It's mostly just sugar.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. But you take an orange and squeeze it and taste it, and it's amazing. We went to my office, the lady that runs my office. I don't know what to really call her. She's our administrative coordinator, but that sounds so cheesy. She's my left hand. And we went to an event.
I like that better.
Yeah, we went to an event here locally recently at a regenerative farm, and it was more about kind of, what's the word they used? Sovereignty of ourself and living the life that we want to live within reason, taking steps on our own to be healthy and not need to lean on other people. If something happened in the grocery store was closed tomorrow, how am I going to feed my family? You need to have that ability to be sovereign and make those decisions and take care of your family. And if you are assertive and you educate yourself and you just take little steps, eventually that turns into a big impact. And that may just be starting to read labels. That may be purchasing your produce from a local farmer, from a produce stand instead of the grocery store.
It's so funny. I think we've talked about this before too. It's like my idea of what's healthy has changed so much since I was a child, right, into what it is now. And it's funny because I'll go grocery shopping and me and my daughter will stay there for 2 hours because I'm reading every package and looking at the nutrition facts or the ingredients or whatever. And she's asked me questions of like, why are we doing this or what is that and it's crazy because I'll walk by people and I'm just like, they're just putting stuff in their cart, or I'm looking at what's in their cart and I'm like, man, like it's kind of concerning, in a way that most people don't do that. right? Most people will just go to the grocery store and buy whatever, right?
Because they're assuming it's healthy and safe, because why would it be legal?
Because you've been
to have it
convinced,
here?
right?
Yeah.
You've been convinced that it is. Yeah, my girlfriend, her family is from England, and their regulations on food are like so much different.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I actually have a patient that I just took in recently who moved here from the United Kingdom, and he's gained a lot of weight, and he said it's from the change in food.
Yeah.
His lifestyle hasn't changed. You know,
Wow.
he got married, but he's still exercising the same intensity, frequency, diet's still about the same, just American food, not your United Kingdom food. And he's gained about 25 pounds, and he's constantly
Jeez.
inflamed and bloated.
Yeah.
His gut is always bloated.
Yeah, so I was going through a period of time too where I was just, I don't know, just like felt like shit. I just felt like shit, you know, and it took me a long time to kind of figure it out. But as of recently too, it's like one of the things I've done is just try and eat more whole foods. It's like the immense change that you just feel in your body where you wake up and you're like, oh, I actually feel kind of normal today.
Isn't it
And
crazy?
Yeah. And like, I'm not, you know, crapping my pants. Like,
This is a lot of what we do with our weight loss clients, even those that are they're medicated, you know, to help with their appetite. We still have to teach them how to eat so that we can eventually meet a goal. And at that point, we shouldn't be making any changes. We should already be in those healthy habits, created a routine that feels odd to defer from.
yes. Yeah.
And so
make it the
we
normal.
do a lot of talk about, you know, whole foods and the importance of whole foods, especially when we're dieting, because we're consuming less calories. So we need those foods that we do consume to be really nutrient dense to make up for that.
Right.
So if you're not eating all different colors and you're avoiding certain groups of foods, you know, that's definitely not going to ensure that you have all those nutrients that you need.
Right.
Speaking of peptides, because semaglutide and Ozempic's like really big right now.
Yeah.
Did y'all hear like Nabisco and all those companies like that are literally lobbying, and that's why peptides laws are changing with big pharma.
Interesting.
So because they're noticing their sales going down because it's so effective.
Because we're eating less.
Because they're eating less.
Nabisco, like the cookie company?
funny.
Yes.
Oh my God.
Well, I'm sure
And
it's
like
parent companies.
well, parent companies, right? They're all
Yeah.
They're all connected.
they're all probably Brookshire.
There's 3 actual companies, you know?
Yeah. And with the peptides, so what he's talking about is there was recently, the end of September, we received notice from the FDA, just guidance stating that bulk compounding of certain peptides, which for those who don't know, peptides are amino acids. Those are naturally occurring, kind of the foundation building blocks of protein muscle. And so we naturally have them in our body, but we can also make them synthetic in a lab, kind of take those amino acids, realign them in that chain to make them do different things. And they're typically a very safe, medication, I guess I'll call it. But peptides are kind of supplements. And so recently the FDA said, we don't have enough evidence of certain peptides that have been legal in this country and used in this country. We don't have enough evidence to show that there's no safety risk. So they're not necessarily saying there is a identified safety risk. They're saying we want those 3-phase trials. We want the research that supports that this is safe to compound and give to patients.
Okay.
They're not happy with the anecdotal evidence. They want to see that scientific evidence, which is great. But unfortunately, what that ends up doing is the big pharmaceutical companies are the only ones that really can afford to do that research. Those 3-phase trials. That there's a lot of money that goes into that and time. And so, if they do decide that these are going to be studied, the people that are going to be studying them are big pharma, those companies, and ultimately they'll end up patenting it, and that will end up going into retail pharmacies. Same medication, typically, this happens all the time, and it ends up being 10 times the cost, and maybe insurance will cover it, maybe not, but it's no longer available to you and I from the compounding pharmacy.
Yeah.
So there's pros and cons to the ban, but we still have a handful of peptides that will be available because they've previously been FDA approved.
I was talking to one of my clients this morning, and he's a gastroenterologist, and we were having this conversation just about like his job and how it works, and I was just kind of picking his brain back and forth, and we started getting into this conversation about insurance and how, it's like they control everything. Like they control how doctors practice, essentially. Like he was like, my job is essentially to go in, diagnose my patient, and then the insurance company will tell me essentially how I can treat it, what medications I can prescribe them, how I'm supposed to treat it, whatever it is. Mm-hmm. And I was like, man, the fact that your hands are almost tied, you can only do what the insurance company can do. Otherwise, you're going to give your patient this $1 million bill, of
well,
how
and it's
expensive
also
it is.
the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid who make a lot of the regulatory guidelines for what we can and can't do.
Yeah.
And generally they're considered suggestions, but if you differ from that, good luck getting that covered by insurance.
Yeah,
Good
because
luck
he was
getting
also
that
telling me that
stay
there's
covered by
like,
insurance.
so he was telling me that he deals with a lot of clients who have ulcerative colitis. And he was saying that there's a medication right now that most insurance companies will cover, but it's really expensive and really invasive. And so it requires the patient to actually go and get infusions at a hospital. And so that's a lot of money for the hospital. It's a lot of money for the insurance company and everything like that. And he was saying that, so I kind of like, thought, and I was like, so are you telling me that there's medication out there that isn't covered by insurance companies that's probably better than the ones that we have now?
Yes.
And he was like, oh yeah, like 100%. Yeah. He was like, there's a medication that was made 30 years ago. It's a pill that you take. It works really well for like mild ulcerative colitis. There's rarely any side effects from it, nothing at all. But the companies who make the medication have stopped making it essentially because it doesn't make money. And so now the insurance companies don't have it on there. I forgot what he called it.
Formulary.
Formulary. There you go. Wow, man. All day I've been like, what the fuck was that word? Yeah. And so, and he was like, yeah, so it's no longer on their formulary. So I can't prescribe it to anybody anymore. And if I do, it's going to be insanely expensive. And also where am I going to find it?
And they're going to have to pay out of pocket.
Yeah. Yeah. And I was just like, this is concerning, man.
It's
like
very, very concerning.
It's scary, it's scary
concerning.
in a sense where it's just like my doctor isn't even the one who's making the calls, they're essentially just someone like a spokesperson for the insurance company.
Well, and on top of that, you have to consider if, they went to a Western medicine program, what we're taught is based on scientific research, and that scientific research has to be funded. And you have to look at the source of the funding and the bias for the research to know if the research is valid. You have to look at the rigor of the study. And, a lot of people don't understand that. You see people arguing on the internet and sharing stories. Well, what about this? And this says this, and they're quoting statistics, and you'll see vastly different statistics and study results. And a lot of it, honestly, it depends on who is funding that study and what does it benefit.
And I guess that's why it's so important to like make your own decisions then, right? To look at research and make your own decisions, because no matter what, it's hard to actually know the truth, about what's actually going on.
Yes.
It's like when we read that study about sodium.
Oh,
and
yeah.
Causing diabetes.
Yeah, so we saw this one article one day. It was on probably the last podcast that we had, Science Daily, and it was talking about how people who have a higher sodium intake are at a higher risk for having type 2 diabetes. And so it's like one of those things where, he was saying like,
correlation.
it's a correlation, right? It's not causation, right? But it's one of those things where if I'm a normal person and this happens to be on the news or something, I'm going to go, oh my God, I can't eat sodium anymore. Yeah, it wasn't the sugar, it was this, right?
The whole carbs, we can't eat carbs are bad.
Right. Everything's bad.
Yeah.
Everything's bad and everything's going to kill you, right? And so it's
even
just
water's bad.
I mean, that's a whole other podcast.
She's like, don't get me started on the water.
Let's just buy an island. We'll start a
I know. I'm like, I want to live in a commune.
It really, if you start researching it and you really spend time researching it and listening to the real experts and evaluating the science yourself, it will make you put on a tinfoil hat. You'll start questioning your sanity.
Yeah. I like after today, I was kind of like, man, this is insane. It's not anything I didn't already know, but I don't think I knew it to this extent, like to how, I don't know, there's this whole scary background, looming thing where it's like, are we in control of anything? And it's kind of scary. And I guess that's why something like you're doing now is so important, because it's like, well, if I can't trust the government, right? If I can't trust the grocery stores or whatever, I can at least trust myself, right? And I can at least make differences individually, right? In order to take control of my own health and life and better myself, in the best way that I can, without, living in a bubble, or something.
And how motivating is that when you're successful?
It is motivating, right? Yeah, it is motivating. Like even saying it right now, I'm like, it's kind of a comforting thought,
it's empowering.
Right. Yeah. Whenever you're, you're getting all this information, you're like, what the hell am I supposed to do? You know what I mean?
Where do I begin? And that's what I dealt with. That when I started kind of opening my eyes and realizing it was, where do I begin? How do I afford to begin? Because we all know that the organic food's going to cost more, that the grass-fed beef, the good stuff, the safe stuff costs more. And that's crazy because there's less processing involved. And but if you don't know, then you can't prevent making the wrong choices. So you have to start by just doing the research and reading labels and pick a couple things that you eat pretty regularly and say, is this healthy?
Do you have favorite brands, favorite companies, favorite things to buy from? Do you have a farm you like going to?
So we do a lot of mail order with ordering our meats. Luckily, we live in Texas. So, there's a lot of options around here that you can order a half a cow very easily and get a cow that where it came from and have information about that. But a lot of the places that sell meat that you can buy mail order, they actually will give you a video and kind of give you an idea of what it's like at the farm, and you can identify if it really is free range or are they just calling it that? But I would say your farmers markets for your produce, if you can. If not, you want to try to purchase organic. You want to wash your produce, use a little bit of vinegar and water, and actually wash those toxins off of the produce that's been sprayed on it. Try to avoid the appeal because we don't really know a whole lot about it yet. And that's a new coating that's being put on some of our produce.
Oh, I heard about this.
Yeah,
right?
So some stores have recognized they're not comfortable with it. H-E-B here in Texas, Publix in Florida, where I'm from, they're not carrying those products. But how many people have never even heard of it? And you eat produce. So have you eaten it? Do you know? So those are things that you can start with. We don't know yet. We don't know.
Yes. I love
we do know that it doesn't wash off. And we do know that it penetrates the coating.
So like if I'm water and vinegar on an appeal produce, it's not going away.
Coming off.
No.
Wow.
And it's literally just to make it look better?
It's preservative.
Yeah. Okay.
It's to preserve it, make it look better by the time you get it.
So they don't waste more food. That's what it's for. And they don't throw away as much product.
Dude.
It's all
and
money.
There's value in that, but it has to be safe for the consumer. And the consumer has a right to be informed.
Yeah. I'm gonna give a silly story right now. Okay. So I know a person and they decided to conduct like their own little like silly experiment on their own because he has a dog. And so he was like, I was outside one day and I noticed that like my dog's poop never decomposes. It just like stays on the ground.
Yeah.
And so he was like, you know what? I'm going to see what happens to mine. And so he did the same thing a dog does and watched it for a couple of days and it never decomposed.
So he needs to do another study.
Yeah. What's this?
He needs to eat whole foods.
And try it again. Exactly. But it was concerning, right? Because I was just like, why isn't it right? It should, right? I mean, yeah, that's why the other day I was at a dog park and I was like, why do they make us pick up dog poop? Like, what, doesn't it just like go away? And then they kind of brought up that story again and I was like, oh, you're right. And I was like, what does it matter? Like, there's deer over here and I'm sure they go, but they decompose because they eat trees and shit, you know what I mean? And so it's like it's concerning, the amount of preservatives and things in our food that don't go away.
Look at trans fatty acids. Trans fat is man-made. And so if you're familiar with biology, every cell in our body has a cell wall, and that cell wall is a phospholipid bilayer. It's fatty acids with a chain, and they basically make that cell wall impermeable to water, and there's options, or there's parts of that cell wall that allow things across the cell wall. And that bilayer is made up of fats. And if you consume a lot of trans fats, those trans fats actually become part of that bilayer, which is a man-made particle, kind of man-made molecule chain. And so that now has replaced your organic, cell wall with a man-made part of that cell wall. And so can you imagine ultimately long-term the breakdown, the destruction of that cell? Is it going to be different? The life of the cell, is it going to be different? How things get into and out of the cell, ATP for energy.
It's like literally changing our biology.
Mm-hmm. It's scary. Yeah. And I don't know. I never knew this, I'm eating Cheez-Its like a crazy person when I was a kid.
Yeah, it's funny. I think about what I ate as a child, right? And again, it's like our parents didn't know, right? My mom wasn't going to sit down and do research. You know what I mean? And even if she was, how was she supposed to get information from it? Yeah. But like I think about it, and I'm just like, man, I drink Kool-Aid and ate Pop-Tarts and drink Sunny D and, you know, whatever. And I'm like, it's amazing I'm even alive right now. But I guess you do feel the effects later on, right? Because it's like, so Edwin was pointing out, so I don't know, probably from like 2018 to like last year, I had no idea, but I was pretty much living in this weird, like miserable days. I was always tired, you know, always. I would be crawling to my bed for a nap after work. Like I just couldn't function. I had no energy, you know, I'd come home and I couldn't play with my daughter because I was just like done. There was a point in time, I don't know if I said this on the podcast, but there was a point in time where I was literally like, maybe I'm asexual. Like maybe I just
I have
don't.
no sex drive.
Yeah, like maybe I just don't care, right? Like maybe that's me, you know what I mean? Whatever. And I just happened to be like listening on the radio, and there was like some testosterone clinic that was like doing testing or something like that, and I was like, whatever, I'll try it out, right? Went to go check, and they made me do like 2 tests, I think. So they made me do one, and then they made me do another one, just to like, I guess, check and see or whatever. But at the end of it, my levels came out, and so I'm 27. I was 26, 25 then. And I think I had like a 400 or something like that, like relatively low. And they were like, like
you're in the reference range.
I'm in the range, right? Yes. But it's low. Yeah. So they were like, maybe you're a candidate for this, whatever. So they put me on, and I've been doing it now for a little while, and you know, I'll do blood work every once in a while whenever they want me to do it. I'm thinking about it now and kind of thinking about what you were saying. And I was like, well, they're not like super on it, you know, like I'm like, maybe I'll change and come over here. But regardless, the change that I felt after that, like I remember the first day I was like, oh my God, like it was almost instantaneous. Like I was like, I feel like I woke up, like what the hell?
Back.
Yeah.
Myself again.
Right. Yeah. And so now I feel pretty normal. I'm more like, it's almost changed my mindset. Like it almost changed how I think.
I've witnessed this many times. My own husband, I witnessed this.
Yeah. I'm sure you've noticed it. Like,
I remember you went just like not that long ago, like 2 weeks without it. And I was like, there's something wrong with it.
Oh yeah. I just got lazy and I wasn't doing it.
And you recognized that he was off? Mm-hmm. Really?
Yeah. And I was just like super, I don't know. Like it's funny.
His girlfriend was complaining too.
It's funny because I was like, why am I so tired? Like, I was like, maybe I'm just not sleeping well. And then I was texting him about it and I was like, oh shit, dude, I'm being real dumb and I haven't taken my medication. And he was like,
let me give you a suggestion. So the number one thing that provides the best outcome with hormones is balance, is continuity with your protocol.
Right. Yeah.
And so if you miss, things happen. So imagine that testosterone level falls faster than your estrogen level.
Right.
Not taking it, you're not going to be estrogen dominant for a short period.
Yeah.
You're going to be bloated. You're going to be tired.
Dude,
it's
moody. Weird. It's weird when you feel like dysregulated. Yeah. It's totally a feeling where you're like, something is wrong. So I'm super consistent with it, except for sometimes I do get lazy and I'm like, nah, I'll do it now.
Your girlfriend texted me, I was on Kingstown to take it.
So you're sneaking in my food.
What's tough is like what you explained. So you were feeling all those deficiency symptoms. Yeah. And it was impacting your quality of life, your marriage, your relationship with your daughter. And so, you know, had you gone to a typical family practice doctor and you got those same labs, they probably guaranteed would have not put you on testosterone.
Because they would have been like, oh, you're in the range, like whatever, right?
Yeah, so in range, right? Yeah. So that range doesn't differ for a 99-year-old or an 18-year-old. You have the same reference range that we're looking at typically. And you'll also find that reference range varies tremendously from textbook to textbook. Organizations like the Endocrinology Society, organizations that provide our guidelines, you'll even see within them some discrepancies.
Wow.
And then take a moment and go to the library and look at some medical textbooks from like the 1950s or 60s and look at how different it was there. What were we walking around with then? It was considerably higher.
Yeah.
And then, you know, and we also need to look at the bioavailability of your testosterone.
Right.
So at 400, if you have a very low free test, because a lot of your testosterone is bound by something, a protein, a globulin, something that makes it not able to attach to receptor sites. It's as if it's not there. So if you don't have an appropriate free testosterone, that gas in your tank does no good.
Yeah.
You know, you're not going to feel well.
It's not going anywhere.
So you have to get a clear picture. And the reason they did it twice is probably because the guidelines recommend that when you initially administer testosterone for someone who's test naive, that you want to get 2 levels to verify that level.
Yeah.
And then, you know, sometimes we're trying to capture a peak and a trough. We might be trying to identify someone who looks okay, 400 or 500 at their peak, but at their trough, maybe they're deficient.
Right.
So that could be causing
they
issues.
made me come in like at a certain time of day and like all this other stuff. And, you know, one of the things that like brought me in is that I was just like, I'm a freaking personal trainer. I work out all the time. I watch what I eat pretty regularly. Sleep I could probably be better on. But I'm a relatively healthy individual. You know what I mean? There's no real reason why I was like, I shouldn't be this tired. I shouldn't have this low sex drive. I shouldn't be like this, you know? And so that was one of the things that drove me in, because I was just like, what the hell is the problem here? You know, like I'm tired. I'm like exhausted of this issue, you know? So it's really been super beneficial. It's really been like a life-changing experience. And it's funny because like you said that, right? And it's like, it affects, it's not just you, right? It's not just, oh, I can't build muscle, or, oh, I can't have sex. Like, it's not that. It's like my relationship with my kid. Like I wouldn't see her because I'd be like, I'm going to go sleep, you know, and I'd
very apathetic. There's a condition called anhedonia that's very common with hormone deficiency and imbalance. And what it basically means is just you kind of lose pleasure in the things that you typically found pleasure in. Maybe hanging out with the guys, going to the gym, throwing the ball with your son. If you don't have the energy, the motivation to do that, you're going to do less of it. And ultimately you become very apathetic to the things that used to excite you. Yeah. And you need that excitement to feel good.
Right. It's crazy because I'll see, me and him read a lot of like Reddit and stuff like that. And there's a lot of like anecdotal stories.
Yeah,
and
there's
stuff
value
like that.
in it.
Yeah, there is. Yeah, yeah. And so there's a lot of stories where like we'll see, you know, women complain about their husbands and how they've changed and blah, blah, blah. Or backwards too, where guys will talk about their wives and be like, she has no more sex drive, whatever. And a lot of times I'm like, man, I wonder what their lives are like. Like, does this person sleep? What is their stress level like? Have they ever got their hormones checked? Yeah. Do they exercise? Like, what do they eat? You know? And it's like, in a relationship, it's so easy to just blame your partner and be like, oh, they're just going away, or they're cheating on me, or whatever it is. Right. And it could just be this thing where it's like, what if they just need medication or a diet change or to exercise or sleep better, right? And
how many doctors actually tell you that?
No, never. Yeah, it's so frustrating.
Yeah, it's definitely something that we can fix the damage. We can replace what you're missing and make you feel better, but we're not going to fix the damage. We're not going to fix the pituitary and make it start producing FSH and LH,
right.
you know, the testicles, if that's where the issue is.
Because that's just what it is at this point, right?
It's happened. And so also we have to look at, you know, the conditions that can occur with leaving you a lifetime of a low testosterone level.
Yeah, it's funny because when I was at the clinic and I was like sort of making the decision of like whether or not I was going to do this or not, I was kind of scared because I was like, man, once I start doing this, like I have to do it forever, you know, like I just have to do this, you know, for at least an extended period of time, you know, and I kind of sat there and the doctor was like, what's your hesitation? And so I was talking to her about it and she was like, well, you could take it and possibly feel better, right? And improve all of these aspects of like whatever's going on, or you could stay how you are now and like kind of, you know, it's probably only going to get worse, you know, over time, like unless you have, you know, giant lifestyle changes or something like that. And it was kind of this moment where I was like, yeah, you know, like I don't really want to feel like shit anymore, you know.
And that's the hard thing that a lot of people deal with is because younger guys are experiencing this, we know that there's a fertility implication when you take exogenous testosterone. So a lot of people have to make that decision. Do I take a risk of impacting my sperm count and feel better, have a sex drive to actually try to conceive or get active and get healthier, or, you know, do I not? And the long-term effect of that is I'm going to feel like crap. And so how do you mitigate that? You know, how do you make that decision? How do you pick one over the other? And truthfully with HRT, it's usually going to be a continuous thing. We don't, steroids people abuse and cycle on and off of, but we don't really cycle HRT. If you're deficient, we're going to help you feel better with this until you decide you don't want to do it any longer.
Yeah. That was one of the questions I had for them too.
You can stop.
Because I'm like
to stop.
Right. Because I'm like in the fitness space, right? So I was just like, do I have to like cycle on or off of this? And they were like,
and
no.
PCT, people always ask me about that. You know? But truthfully, if you do decide you're going to come off and you've been on it for quite some time, there's a right way to do it. And you do that with your healthcare provider.
Right. Yeah. Because they told me the same thing too. They're like, if you ever want to have a kid or you like want to start doing stuff like that, you have to tell us because there's certain things that we have to do or medication, you know, to like.
We try to help reduce that risk.
Right. Like to let that come back up. And
believe it or not, they're peptides.
There you go. Yeah. So yeah, it's been an interesting experience, definitely over the past like 2 years, where I've just like grown, learned, been educated on this stuff, kind of gone through it really, and it's definitely, I guess, and what I'm trying to say is that I would recommend that if anybody's going through this type of stuff, to contact someone like you, right? Mm-hmm. The worst you're going to do is get a blood test,
Yeah.
And
on top of that, honestly, if you feel amazing, if you're 27 years old and you're on top of your game, now's the time to get some labs. You need to know what your amazing looks like on paper.
Right.
Because when you do go through andropause, when you are feeling terrible and we are trying to fix your hormones and help you feel your best, we already have a benchmark. We know what you lived with.
You know what the foundation is. Yeah.
I tell people that all the time. Like when my kids get older, we are going to test you to make sure you know what amazing feels like.
Right. Yeah. Because I didn't know. Right. I had no idea. I don't know what I would have been like, if I got a blood test at 18 or whatever it is, right, when I was probably producing the most testosterone I could. Mm-hmm. I have no idea, and then it's for those years that I wasn't probably producing enough. It's like, how long did I live in this sort of like, I don't know.
Fog.
It sucked, man. Yeah. It really does suck. Yeah. Like, so if anybody goes through this stuff, like, I get it, like, I understand it's not fun.
Sometimes people don't understand that it's hormone related.
And I think also too, you just kind of, like, you almost become, it just becomes like you're normal. Mm-hmm. So you don't even realize that something's wrong.
I hear that a lot.
Yeah.
I'll have a patient come to me with a complaint of, fatigue, brain fog, and he's a police officer. So he's in a parole car all the time. And, if they're not super busy, he might struggle quite a bit with staying awake and things like that.
Yeah.
And we get some labs and we get him on testosterone because he's deficient. And the next thing I know, when I do that follow up, he's like, man, I didn't realize my sex drive sucked. I didn't realize I didn't have,
for real, man. Like
my erection quality wasn't great. Or
it's funny. Like, so Edwin is very like, he likes talking about things like this. Right. And I would hear,
you got to point that out. Yeah. I like talking about things like this.
Cause like I would hear him talk, or like my brother is another person who I'm like, you don't need a test, bro. You got high testosterone, I promise. And it's like, I would hear them talk about stuff and I'm just like, I don't really think like that, like I don't have those same like thoughts, or I don't feel like that same drive, or I don't have, even if it's just about like working, right? It doesn't have to be about sex drive or anything like that. And I would just be like, nah, maybe I'm just different, maybe I just don't think like that, whatever. And I think that there's still a little bit of that, because I still don't think I think the exact same as him. But it's like,
I'm on a different level.
Yeah, he definitely is. Yeah. But it's like, now that I've increased like my levels are normal now, for me at least, right? I'm like, okay, I get it. Like, I understand where like they come from, and I understand why they think this way. I understand all those things, and it's like, it's crazy.
So think about how much does that impact your decision making. So think about, as a population, if we all are having low hormone imbalance and deficiency, are we making the same decisions that we would be with those appropriate hormones? Who knows?
That's crazy.
Think about it. If you look at our early podcast, right, in the conversations that we had, you could tell that you had more of a victimhood mentality, right?
Be more assertive now.
And then now he's more assertive. He is like, hey, it's all on you as an independent individual. And you could tell when he takes that hormone shot versus when he doesn't.
That's
like, it's
funny.
like right away.
Yeah, because you're right. And it's funny. I'm like thinking back now. I've been going through this process in therapy where I'm trying to like remember things. Yeah. I'm realizing that I don't remember a lot of stuff. For some weird reason. Anyway, but you say, I know. Yeah. Oh, tell me about it. But you just brought something up that I thought about now. And it's like, I remember when I was, like 18, 19, I had a kid very early. And I remember in that time that I was very like, no, it's all me. I gotta work hard, like whatever it is.
Carried on my shoulders.
Yeah. And I guess over time, maybe you just, I don't know, got exhausted. Maybe I didn't really work out a lot. I was really stressed out all the time, things like that. And so I guess like over time, I kind of like lost that sort of drive, really, and
I witnessed it with my husband, very similar. He was the type of guy who went through the motions, get up, go to work, punch the clock, do what you gotta do, go to sleep, just tired, not really doing anything to enjoy life, and once we had that evaluation and he started hormones, this was a couple years ago, I watched him really come out of his shell and try to achieve a job that I never in a million years would have thought he would have gotten, and he tripled his salary. That.
I mean, like,
I've taken.
In a good way, I've taken like career risks, right? I changed my whole, like, I don't know, education path. I was going to school to be a physical therapist, and at one point I was just like, you know what, I don't want to do this anymore. This sucks. Like, I don't want to live my life this way. I don't want to sell myself to school. Like, I don't want to do this. I'm just going to go full into personal training, go full into like a business endeavor, you know, all of these things. And all of it's been really good. And I think it really does come down to, maybe this is a testosterone talking, but it's like, it really does come down to like how hard you're willing to work at those things. You know, I mean, you opened your own business on your own.
Oh, it was terrifying.
Right? It's freaking
absolutely
scary.
Terrifying.
It's so scary.
Yeah. I know it's so scary, guys. I'm cool and calm.
This guy's a cute cucumber, man. Yeah. He's on the beach all the time.
I'm all about taking the risk.
Edwin is very relaxed, you know, in decision making and things like that. And I'm definitely, I feel like we're very yin and yang.
Yeah.
Where I'm like high anxiety, like, and he's very like, dude, just chill out, you know. And
good.
There's always tomorrow.
Yeah. And it is scary. You know, it's super scary. Yeah. I remember when I sat, you know, it was very dramatic indie movie style. I was like in a coffee shop studying for school, and I sat there and I was like looking at my homework, and I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. And like I closed my computer, left, made the decision. I went to school the next day, withdrew, and I was like, I'm done. Yeah. I had my bachelor's degree already and everything, but I had spent money, time, everything, and I was like, I can't do it anymore. I felt like I was talking to my girlfriend the other day, and I was like, I felt like I was living someone else's dream.
You weren't excited about it anymore.
No. Yeah. If anything, it was just like this thing I felt like I had to do.
And how good are you going to be at that, if that's the case?
Right. Yeah. And then, you know, me and him, we had known each other for a long time, and we met each other and kind of, you know, he was already trying to do his own thing too. And I guess just really hadn't found a reliable person. Yeah. And honestly, I was just like, fuck it. Like, I'll try, you know, like, let's see what we can do. Yeah. And we've been doing this for like 2 years now.
Believed in each other.
Yeah.
My partner and I were the same. And my husband, really, we're kind of a trio, but I couldn't have done it without their support and basically us trusting in each other's abilities.
A business partner relationship is kind of weird, right?
It is. It's like a marriage.
Yeah. It's like a third relationship that you have.
I got an extra ring right here for him.
I'm going to have two.
Lindsay, you got to give me a ring. I guess I got to get her a ring.
Yeah.
So we have a lot of female clients. I want to end on like with women, because women's health is a big issue, and hormones for women. And especially most of our clients are probably women in the training space.
In personal training, yeah, I would say like at least 75%, if not more, are women.
Yeah. And then all these diets throughout history has really harmed women hormonally more than it has men because of certain circumstances, right? You got to bear a child. A man doesn't got to bear a child, or fertility.
We'll start with, we push at a very young age the oral birth control on these girls. We start regulating their cycle, we call it.
Yeah.
But what we're really doing is tricking their body to think that they're pregnant so they don't ovulate. So now we've changed a process in your body to prevent you from having a child, which I understand the purpose, but there's an unintended effect.
Yeah, I'm very
osteopenia, osteoporosis later in life, things like that, right? And there's a couple of good doctors that or PhDs that I listen to, like Dr. Jolene Brighton and stuff like that, who talk about hormonal birth control. So it affects their hormones and everything is controlling that. What is a normal range for a woman? What are symptoms they need to look at to say, okay, my hormones are off or imbalanced? What should women look for, period? Because obviously we're men here. We don't think the same, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, we want obviously a regular cycle. A typical cycle is 28 days. And, you know, you ask probably 10 women and females and over the age of 15, you know, that menstruate, and you'll probably see maybe 40% of them have regular cycles. So that's a concern right off the bat. Our body should be, these cycles are important. So that cycle needs to be regular. Your periods, you know, they shouldn't be variable. We shouldn't have really heavy periods sometimes and really light periods others. We shouldn't have pain. We shouldn't have huge bloating.
Hold on. So you shouldn't have pain, right? A lot of people think that's normal.
It's not normal.
Is it mostly because of a deficiency that's pulled from the body, or what's going on?
So potentially, but you know, we have, the way that we menstruate as females is that uterine lining sheds. And so there are hormones that impact how thick that uterine lining actually is. Things also like cysts. We see lots of uterine ovarian cysts. Those will impact that as well. So as we shed that lining, that should be pretty similar every time we menstruate. It shouldn't be really lots of blood clots and nastiness and pain sometimes, and then light and easy and simple sometimes. We should see things very similar with that pattern. Honestly, as we age, we expect to see some changes to our hormones, and we expect to feel at times those hormone changes, of course, but it shouldn't be miserable. Menopause shouldn't be miserable. We shouldn't be perimenopausal in our 30s, and that would be those hormone imbalances for whatever reason, environmental or injury or stress. So regularity, number one, pattern, like I mentioned, and then comfort level. You should follow with your GYN. You should do those pap smears and those clinical breast exams and those annual exams, because they give us part of that diagnostic data to identify changes. We will feel changes when we do that clinical breast exam. Very dense breast or fibrous breast identifies certain things to us. So it's important that you do that follow-up. But if you're not feeling well, and when we talk about hormones, the most common symptoms that we experience as females with sex hormone imbalance or deficiency is fatigue, brain fog, difficulty with short-term memory, word recall. We're feeling like we're just in a fog all the time. There's a lot of things that can cause that, but in part, hormones could cause that. And we see that as the hormones change. We shouldn't feel big jumps in weight or big drops in weight. We should be able to maintain our weight when we're maintaining the same lifestyle. So if you're seeing an increase in belly fat that's coming on in your middle age, it's possible that could be a symptom of those hormone changes. If you're losing your sex drive, and for females, unfortunately, what kind of couples that change in hormones is the female body parts kind of atrophy, the vagina kind of atrophies, and we lose that subcutaneous tissue in there. The skin becomes thinner, and so intercourse might be uncomfortable, or we might have bleeding with intercourse. So those are the most common things that we experience. But mood swings, episodes of depression, anxiety coupled with that, it's a lot of different symptoms that patients can experience at different times, so it may be variable. So really, it's important to speak to your doctor if you are having any symptoms that you think might pertain, and see if they'll draw some labs. If they won't, look into trying to find someone that will at least draw them for you and give you an idea of what's going on, so that you can take that to your primary and see, hey, this is what I found out. Can you help me? So you have a lot of options, and we can work together. I work with clients, although I don't take health insurance, I work with clients who have health insurance. And if the best thing for them to be able to afford this is to help them find a provider that will accept health insurance for this, I'll try to help them. I'll put together their consult notes and make sure I document really clearly how maybe 6 months of therapy really improved their health, their labs, their energy level, their waist circumference. Like, we'll just list it all, and we'll show the value. And then they take that to their primary and say, look at this, look how much better I am. Will you continue this so we can bill insurance? Sometimes they'll do it. But you got to talk to someone and get a lab panel at least.
Very cool.
So post-menopause, right? Or during menopause, they're starting to introduce hormones, right, to women. What is the hormone they're using? Like, is there a certain level or protocol that goes on? Because I have a couple clients that are going into menopause pretty soon, right? They're getting to that age. And I've been telling them it's time. Times have changed, and they're trying to introduce hormones. So things like osteoporosis, osteopenia, things are a lot better off for you post-menopause. What's like a protocol y'all go through and things like that, just an example?
So again, it's going to depend on the patient and how their hormones are declining, because sometimes we might see a huge drop in progesterone, but their estradiol is staying right up there, you know? So it depends on the patient, but for the most part, we're administering progesterone, which is typically administered by capsule or cream, administered topically. We're using estradiol, estrione, different types of estrogen, which depends on what you're deficient in and what your provider decides to use for you to increase that estrogen. Sometimes we're using testosterone to increase both the testosterone and the estrogen. And in my opinion, that's a win if we can do that with someone who's deficient, that we don't need to give them estrogen because of the risk.
Yeah.
So it's variable. You know, you have patches, you have implanted pellets, you have injections, you have creams. So it really depends on what the patient needs. And then again, what's going to give them that continuity. If I tell you I need you to inject twice a week in your muscle, and that's not something you can do, you're not going to be able to maintain that protocol and feel good. So we also have to tailor the protocol to your needs and educate you. But also sometimes the route that we use is dependent on their condition. For instance, somebody who's very anemic, an injection of testosterone is likely to increase their red blood cell count. So maybe we might want to use injectable for that person instead of a cream, because we're trying to get that anabolic effect that makes their bone marrow spit out more red blood cells. so they can carry oxygen a little bit better and have more energy. So we tailor it dependent on the patient, and we just discuss balancing correctly, reducing symptoms, and improving the risk for chronic conditions related to that deficiency. Those are the biggest things that we're focused on. And then, of course, I'd be remiss to say that there's not a physical and a performance enhancing aspect of balancing hormones. It kind of comes with it. You know, we have more strength, endurance, motivation. We lean out a little bit if those hormones are balanced easily with the right diet and exercise. We can build muscle a little bit with the right diet and exercise if those hormones are optimal. So there's a lot of secondary effect from the hormones being balanced that we can achieve.
Okay.
Man, you were fantastic.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you, Dawn.
Can you give us some like maybe contact information, where are you located?
Sure.
Maybe financial information. How much does it cost as a subscription?
Absolutely. So we don't do any subscriptions. We're no contracts. So typically you reach out to us. We get some labs. If you have to pay out of pocket for your labs, it's around $179. Once we have those labs in, we meet, we go over them, we talk about everything, we come up with a plan of care. The way that we work is through compounding pharmacies. So we'll order the medication. They'll make it specifically for the patient, and then they ship it directly to the patient with all of their supplies for that protocol. And then we do a video call with the patient if needed. We educate you on how to administer it yourself. So you have that autonomy to do it at home on your own, in the privacy of your own home, and then just come in or meet with me to review labs for follow-up, and just in between sometimes, if you need anything, patients will reach out about diet, nutrition advice, or exercise advice, and all of that is included. We don't charge for consultations. So depending on what you need, basic testosterone protocol for a male usually runs, for a 10-week protocol, runs around $274. That includes everything: medication, syringes, shipping, consultations. That is refilled when the patient decides to refill it. So if you decide that you didn't love it, you're not committed to anything. But that's typically what they'll do, is every 10 weeks or so, they refill that protocol. For females, it's a little bit cheaper. We use a little bit less volume in milligrams, so it's cheaper for us. And usually that's around $199 for 6 months. So a little bit cheaper. If we need to add other progesterone or estradiol, it just depends. If we're trying to use a capsule or a cream, it runs around $1 a capsule or $1 a day.
Okay. All right, guys.
Very cool.
So if y'all are enjoying this podcast, please rate and review us at Strength Solutions. We're on Apple and Spotify. Also, if you're looking for a website, it's ssempowered.com. You can follow us there, and we have blogs, guides, and programs for their own purchase. Then, if you're looking to email us future fitness questions, it's strengthsolutionsempowered@gmail.com. On Facebook, it's Strength Solutions. On Instagram, it's Strength Solutions Empowered. I'm Strength Solutions Edwin.
I'm Strength Solutions Nathaniel.
Until next time, guys, what?